One reason why we don't tap into SQ is because we always tap into IQ and EQ. We don't create any pathway to SQ unless we're in trouble. So when I'm in trouble, it's like I seek the Lord. And I'm seeking the Lord for answers. I'm seeking the Lord for answers. And sometimes when I tell a lot of people I'm seeking the Lord for answers, that means I don't actually seek him most of the time, but I am now. And like I got this little trail like through the jungle, and I'm like, I was here back in 73. I remember seeking him when I couldn't figure out what to do, and I asked all my friends, and they didn't know either. And I got a counselor, and he didn't know, and I read every book, and I couldn't figure it out. So I remember hacking I think it was some way north. But what would happen if my default was spiritual intelligence? What would happen instead of, I got diagnosed with cancer, now I got to find a miracle answer? What would happen if I lived every day connected to the Spirit, and if I walked by the Spirit instead of by the flesh? When I'm talking about flesh now, I know that word can be negative. I mean, instead of by IQ and EQ, I actually live by the Spirit, and I connect there first, and I connect here second. And pretty soon, I'm connected to the internet of the Holy Spirit naturally. There's a great story in the book of Daniel, and for the sake of time, I'll just read you one verse. Daniel was talking to Nebuchadnezzar, who, this is in Daniel chapter 2, so it's very early into his relationship with Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar has had a dream about the statue, the head being gold, all the way down to the feet clay. Do you remember this? Mixed clay. And the king knows, I love this part, the king knows that he has had a divine encounter, but he doesn't know how to interpret the divine encounter. I think that's interesting. In other words, I believe Nebuchadnezzar probably had many dreams. But this dream, he knows, has something to do with his kingdom. And so he's willing to kill everybody if they can't tell him the dream and the interpretation, which is highly logical to me. I work for a guy like that. Anyway, this is what Daniel says to him. As for you, king, while you were on your bed, your thoughts turned to what would take place in the future. And he who reveals mysteries has made known to you what will take place. It's interesting because how did Nebuchadnezzar, maybe this isn't exactly true, but it feels to me like this. Nebuchadnezzar accidentally tapped into SQ. How did he do it? He's laying on his bed and he's asking a question about something he can't answer with his IQ and EQ. And he goes, I wonder what the future holds. And Daniel said, when you asked a question that you could not answer, the God who answers mysteries, the God who knows all mysteries, answered you. And I'm like, how many times do Christians ever do that? How many times have we ever lay awake at night and think about things that no one's ever asked God before? And like, that's why we don't have much SQ, because we're always asking questions that some human can answer. And Nebuchadnezzar's asking a question that no human can answer. And Daniel said, when you did that, the God who knows all mysteries talked to you. I'm like, how do I tap into SQ? How about if I start asking God instead of my friend first? Listen, I believe in the abundance of counselors. There's victory. I believe in all of that. But what would happen if I just started, even if I took 10 seconds before I do it some other way? I go, God, you want to be involved in this question. And I get no answer, I Google it. I do something else. But at least I give God a chance to build a relationship where I can actually walk in the Spirit instead of walking mostly in the flesh, and I turn to the Spirit when I'm desperate. And by the way, sometimes I feel like if we only turn to God in a crisis, it's amazing how we live from crisis to crisis.